What up? Hey, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in once again. It is Monday. It is 8:33, I think. We're a couple of minutes late, but this is Conversations with Teresa. I am excited because we are in tune, in place for part 2 of DWW. Hopefully you guys remember what that is. Is driving while white. We'll put a little parentheses around the DEI. We have Steve here. He's going to be talking about really what he gets a chance to do driving diversity, but from the point of view of being a white male. So we're excited. Last week, we got a chance just to kind of lay down some foundations about how you got into this, how this started, and just the authenticity of I want to be here. I want to do this. I want to be better. I know you're going to be able to explain it a little bit better, but tonight again we get a chance to talk about the other part. Well, there's many parts, but we get a chance to talk about the fear behind it. And it may not sound like, it's not fear like Freddy Krueger fear, but there are some fears, just like as Black people, we had fears about saying something, speaking up, doing whatever, being perceived in some way. But there are fears also from the other side. Steve, thank you so much for being here and just really being brave to put yourself out there. I don't know if you would call it brave or you would just call it you. But I really appreciate you coming on and being able to have this conversation because it's a tough one.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. It is a tough conversation. Mm-hmm. People don't have these conversations, which is why there's such divide still.
Yeah.
Ignoring it is easier. Like residing in different camps, maybe whispering about it, but actually like just being honest is really difficult, and it creates this vulnerability that a lot of people are scared about.
Right. Absolutely. And it is unfortunate. You just like you said, it was just being honest is scary. It's so much safer, kind of like you remember the eye, covering the eyes, the mouth, and the ears.
Right. Yeah. Hear no evil, see no evil. Yeah. Say no evil.
There you go. So there unfortunately has been evil that has happened though. And that's the challenge, right? It has happened. It has gone on for so long that reality, like we just kind of thought, I'll say I, in a lot of ways, just thought like, well, that's just the way that it's going to be. Yeah. So there was a lot of, we didn't say anything. We just we stayed in our circle, we said it amongst our, the people who were like us because they understood us, and so anyway, we're going to get into it. And here's just a question, right? And we'll just start. I love Conversations with Teresa because it is a conversation, right? It is just a conversation. So what do you have to be afraid of? And I say you, I put you obviously in I let you speak for
white males. I will speak on behalf of all white people now.
But there's a legit, what is it? Or not, maybe not just it, right? It could be a few different things, but what would be making you afraid or apprehensive to really embrace DEI and in the efforts that DEI is trying to make?
Sure. That's a really good question and a tough one to answer.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to answer from like an academics perspective and really difficult to say it from a social perspective, but let's give it a try.
Let's do it.
I think, it's no surprise that white people have privilege. And they are the majority of the population, and with that comes status and power, privilege, influence. If I, as a white person, seek to dismantle that, I'm reducing my impact. I'm reducing what is perceived as my success. I'm reducing. I'm taking assets and resources away from me.
Yeah.
So why do I want to do that when my situation does not necessarily improve?
Right.
So that's one thing. It's just a reallocation of resources that I have that I would be losing. So I think that's one of the things that comes to mind is resource allocation.
Okay.
A second thing is fear of being seen as racist. I think there are a lot of people who don't speak up because they don't want to appear as ignorant. They don't want to appear that flat out. They just don't want to appear as racist.
Right.
And if I don't say anything, if I don't emote, if I don't communicate anything, the worst thing they're going to see is the guy's apathetic. He's removed. He's a little resistant, but he's not actively racist. And I think there's a lot of polarity with the term racist, whereas the term and the definition have changed drastically over the last 80 years. And that still, there's a lot of discomfort with that.
I haven't really thought about that it changed. That I don't think I've ever thought that way.
I from my understanding is the term racist, capital R racist, was like white supremacist. Like, here I am, white people are better than black people. And that's the perception a lot of white people have. I'm not racist. I'm not this, I'm not that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Whereas the more modern definition and understanding is it's more about preference. So lowercase racist is, you know what, I gravitate towards white people or white values, or, white is just more my comfort zone. It's a preference. And so when somebody is called racist, it's based on their interpretation, and a lot of people get defensive about that.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I think I probably just rolled it all into one.
Yeah.
Like, again, I think my perspective has just been, it's just been that, that was the case, and it was didn't necessarily start with you, your dad and grandma and Uncle Joe, and it was all rolled in. And so those, like when you talked about those values, those experiences, those conversations, that was just that natural way of being brought up,
Right.
that was my perspective.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think I've grew up enough to understand that no, it didn't start with with the 30-year-old white person. It was generational.
Right.
And the same on our side, all that stuff, the things that I've heard growing up and seeing. I have, this may or may not be random, but I remember I would go down south in South Carolina when I was, just young. Every summer, just about, we would go down and visit the family. And my aunt lived in, I guess, the housing project that was down there. It was a cul-de-sac. The projects in Boston was not like the projects down there. I was like, that's the projects, right? I'm like, this is a nice project. But anyway, I divert. At any rate, but I remember waking up, it was like a Saturday morning, and there was a car full of white men. They got out their car and they went to, I don't know, maybe not a minivan, but it was like 6 people, but they got out and they were walking to everyone's home to sell insurance or something, or to check up. It was something. And I just remember my aunt, just saying, oh, here they go again. And it was that I didn't even know like what it was. I don't even know if it was insurance. I might have just made that up.
Sure.
But it was that thing where they came in, they had something to offer that, they couldn't do themselves. And they came in to either collect money or do something, whatever, to show you the way. And then they would leave.
Oh,
That
okay.
was my perspective. That's what I got out of it, and hearing like the conversation, my aunt was like, no, no, no. It was a different tone. She took a different tone. It was like a much more submissive tone, when she was talking with them, but then she was totally aggravated, before they came, totally submissive. And then when they left, aggravated again. But like all of that stuff, those are the things that I remember. Like, okay, how do you speak to white people? How do you, all of this. And so again, all that to say is that I learned that it didn't just start with the person in front of me, all of that stuff. It grew, I grew up with that. So anyway, back to the fear. But being called a racist.
Yeah. Your example is such a great illustration. Like here you're talking about groups and safety in numbers before. And you have a project, and I'll make an assumption that the project was mostly Black folks or didn't have white folks.
Right, absolutely, all Black people.
And suddenly you've got this invasion of white folks in there, and there's suspicion. What are they doing here? What do they want? What's their motivation?
Right.
And so everyone's backs up.
That's it.
And suddenly white people who have authority, what are they doing? What's this authority group doing? How long are they going to be here? And when are they going to get the hell out of here?
Yeah, pretty much.
So fear right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate. So again, here's that fear. Whether you're at the workplace, of being seen as racist, whether you're, oh gosh, don't get online and be seen as racist. That's a whole other. I mean, now we have the term the Karen, that's it is, but it's real, it's very real. You could be seen in your family as racist or not, I would imagine. Or
you could have the opposite, where you are a member of a family that is racist, capital R racist, and then you're a little bit. You're different. Your thinking and values have changed from that element. So suddenly your values differ, and your association with that group can be a leading cause for fear. Like, oh, I don't associate with this folks anymore, but my identity is so tied in with them. How am I contributing to this group?
Right. Right. And what would that do? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if, you've even experienced that, but that, either one of those things where you have been, either called out or assumed that you were racist because you said something or did something. I don't know if has any of that ever happened to you.
Oh, I can't think of anything right off the top, but I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what are some of the things that white people could say, that you think that white people could say or do that they would be labeled racist? Let's take it in an employment environment.
Sure.
And most people are smart enough not to be like, I hate Indian people, I hate Black people, I hate gay people, right? We're not.
Yeah.
I would like to think.
Hopefully that overt-ism is not right.
Right. But what are some of the things that you've seen, experienced that really could be called racist?
It's always assumption based. It's making a snap decision based on how somebody presents. Here's a Black person coming down the street. I bet you they play basketball. I bet you they like fried chicken and collard greens. Like it's those uneducated assumptions that we make about somebody. That's racism. It's judging somebody for what group they belong to and not who they are.
Right, right. And have you personally experienced any of these things? Like, have you witnessed this happening? So let me back up a little bit. I tend to think very optimistically that if someone says something, surely they didn't mean to be mean or racist or that way. They surely meant to be nice about it. That is that until you prove me wrong.
Right.
That is usually my assumption.
Right.
Or until you do it like 6 times. But and like, so I've seen it. I can definitely share some of the ways that I've seen, but what have you seen in your work, in your research, in your everyday life? What have you seen just on in employment environment?
I've seen several examples. One that comes to mind, I used to work in Queens, and at my workplace in Queens, the security office absolutely positively treated white folks different than black folks. And when there was some sort of concern or some sort of report, the white people just were given the benefit of the doubt, whereas black folks were questioned a little bit stronger, and assumptions were made. Was this person telling the truth? Were they just trying to get away with something? Employers wondering about time. I mean, it's as simple as something like somebody being late. People give people who look like them more leniency. Like, oh yeah, that's just Tracy. She was a couple minutes late. She's got her kids. But LaToya shows up a couple minutes late, and it's like it's a character flaw. So it's this element of just not being consistent and not being aware of your inconsistency.
Okay.
Does that track all right with you?
No, absolutely.
So there is that, like, there's a subtleness to it sometimes that white folks don't understand or don't see, and then a black person who's receiving this on the receiving end be like, excuse me, like, wait, hold on a second, you just treated her way different than you treated me, and we're the same, we're here doing the same thing,
right?
So there's just this different treatment,
right, and different response, especially.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. White people don't like confrontation. They do not like. There's literature on this, and there's this 13 values of white dominant culture, and one of them is fear of conflict. Fear of open conflict is something academics have identified as being something that white people in a white dominated culture don't like and seek to avoid.
Okay.
So you've got this establishment created by white folks, and this is one of the assumptions that are made. It's an assumption, so it's not clearly stated. And then you've got black folks who didn't get the memo because there is no memo.
There's no memo.
And they don't like something, they speak up. And suddenly, who are you? You're the angry black woman.
That's right.
And it's just like, wait. I mean, that's how quickly things can escalate, evolve, and people get reputations. The white folks are leveraging their power because they're the ones who are dominating the culture. They're calling the shots, and the culture is aligned with their values. And then those cultural values are not clearly stated. They're not clearly enforced, and reputations are created as a result of interacting in those environments.
Now, I will get back to the different fears, but you brought up
Sure.
an like a really interesting point. I have not been through a good DEI training.
Hmm.
I haven't,
Hmm.
right? But I wonder if when you said it was 13 traits, is that what
Yeah.
you okay. So I wonder, are things like that, if there was a good training, all the trainings that you've gotten, are those the things that are spoken about? Because the reality is that there were just times that you just thought that you were crazy, that I thought I was crazy.
Sure.
I'm like, what in the world? Right? You know, sometimes I'm just like, nope. And then sometimes I'm like, is it me? You know, it's happened, but in a diversity training, are those the type of things that are spoken about?
In an effective one, I believe so.
Okay.
But to your point, how many of them have been effective?
Okay.
So, I mean, one of the things is to identify the assumptions, the unspoken values, bring that to light, and then have the leadership, the folks who are calling the shots and setting the tone, have them, really reflect on that. Say, is this a value? Is timeliness a value? And if it is, how are you communicating that to everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Does everyone understand that a 9 o'clock meeting means you have to be there at 8:55? Or is it like we start when we start? So
Right.
what is the implicit or unspoken expectation?
Okay.
And if management, if leadership is willing to explore that, and some of them aren't. Some of them want the DEI work so they can slap a label on their mission statement and say, hey, we did this training, hooray for us.
Mm-hmm.
And there are others who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do that really um, that difficult work.
Yeah.
And that requires them looking at themselves and saying,
Mm-hmm.
wow, this is the value system that I've always known, and this is the way that capitalism works,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty much aligned. How do we adjust ourselves so that we're more equitable and we create a space for belonging?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a I don't mean to make excuses, and I again where I always think that everyone is, they're trying to do the right thing. I assume those things,
Yeah.
but it's not only is it a tough conversation, but it's just it's a newer way of thinking. Like,
Yeah.
but the whole thing now gets flipped. Like you said, like here's all these things that have been in place for
Yeah.
all these years upon generations,
Yeah.
not only at the workplace, but in the community and at home. And all these things have been going for so long, and now it's
Right. The system is trying, like people are seeing the system for what it is. It's
mhm.
it's not fair. And how do we dismantle the system?
Yeah, yeah. It's a
One
lot of
thing that you brought up a couple of times, I wanted to just kind of comment on it.
sure.
Is this intent? I do believe most people are well intended, and they're not looking to hurt people. They're
Hmm.
not. They're not. I mean, they're out for themselves, probably. I mean, we
Yeah,
all work so that we can earn a wage and take care of our families and our responsibilities.
right,
So I don't think most people go out to in like directly hurt someone. There isn't malice in their intent,
right.
but there's also impact. So I could say something to you, mean nothing by it. It's nothing to me, but it lands and it hits you hard, and there's damage and there's hurt there.
Yeah,
And I think we need to have a better understanding on what that is. Steve's a nice guy. He didn't mean it. You might do some work to just kind of process it. He's a white dude. He's out of touch. It's fine. But you carry that impact.
yeah, Yep.
And so we need some better language so that when we have those moments, you could say, hey, hold on a second. I just want to let you know this landed really hard and heavy on me.
Mm. Yep.
And so in a way that I don't get defensive, because I could just say, oh, she's just an angry Black woman. But for me to be able to receive that and say, you know what, thank you for sharing that. I'll continue to do better.
Mm.
But we're not, we don't have that language yet.
Right. Right. And hopefully the more that we talk about this and get better, at being honest.
Yeah.
Right. And
right.
not offended rather.
Right.
Those are going to be some steps to take, but man, it's a big hill to climb.
And you think about that scenario in a workplace. If I said something, you're upset with me. Either you hold it to you, or you speak up to me, and suddenly I'm receiving you negatively.
Right.
And the tension just gets there's more friction.
Yeah.
So there needs to be this better understanding, this better communication.
So right. So we said this last week. Oftentimes we think about DEI being all about race, but man, that culture, again, I'm kind of harping on that comment that you made, like white people don't like confrontation. I was like, that's true. Like I was just thinking about like all the different people that I think about, like my white friends. They're like, wow, you really speak up for yourself. And I'm like, you don't. Like it's unheard of to me. Like, why would you take that? But I'm like, oh, that makes sense now.
It doesn't apply to everyone, but it's
right. Yes, I definitely do know some very vocal. Well, yeah, I know some, but the majority are very much like, okay, well, we're not going to say anything.
Or let's just table that for later, or we'll circle back to that. And then no one ever does.
We're not circling back to Jack, right?
Please.
But anyway, okay. So I've totally gone off topic. Some other fears we talked about, just the resources being taken away. We talk about being seen as a capital R or little r racist.
Yep.
What else? Or are there other things that you noticed?
Those are the strong ones for me.
Yeah.
I think it's self-image. I think about, for several people like to see themselves as having earned their place in the world and life.
Right.
And if somebody's whiteness is called into question, or if their white privilege is presented, they may not agree with that for simply because they feel like they earned it. They earned their status.
Right. Yeah.
So there is an element of saving your own image, self-image.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. It absolutely. And I mean, it goes all over the place, right? It goes for every race. I mean, I was watching my kids watch the show Darman, and in a YouTube video about just good morals, in all honesty. And there was a girl on there. She was Asian teenager, but she wasn't good in math. And the shame that she carried, she's like, I know I'm Asian. I should be good at math. And, and it's things like that. We had, I don't know if you ever heard, we have a game called Black Card Revoked. Right. So like, if you don't know this particular thing about Black culture, you could get your Black card revoked. Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Man card can be taken away for you. You have cats. Oh, there goes your man card.
Okay. So it's all these things, and some of the things we're inflicting on ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. But it's true. So it goes all around. And again, I don't mean to make any light or take any responsibility away, But I think the more that we do understand that we are alike a lot more than we're different, it just presents differently, then it's going to be a little easier to have these conversations.
Right.
And I would hope that this is me being optimistic, it will take some years to be able to have the conversation flow the way that I'm able to, to speak to you about race or ask you questions or things like that. It will, I do think that it will take, I think it'll take some years.
And I agree. And it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And we're going to make mistakes.
Yes.
I'm certain that I've made a mistake or two in our conversation today. It may have been subtle, or it may have been, out
It was
there.
only the way that you said collard greens.
Oh.
I think you said collard greens. Like, oh, okay.
Oh, I thought I said, oh, okay.
It's technically correct, but it's just collard greens.
All right.
But we'll let you slide.
Thank you. I appreciate your grace.
Not a problem.
But that's it. I mean, there's discomfort, and I think we're looking to be perfectionist.
Yeah.
And we're really worried about the way we are seen, like our social image and how we're perceived. Like, think about how people present themselves on social media. You don't see the negative; you just see the shiny, glossy happiness.
Right.
And we want to present perfect.
Yeah.
And this conversation is not going to be perfect. It's going to be clumsy. It's going to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And when we're done, I'm going to think to myself, did I say too much, or did I speak off? But we have to have the conversation. It's more important to have the conversation than worrying about how I presented.
Right. Absolutely. And again, that's that thing that's going to take some time, especially, again, given my new insight that if white people don't like confrontation, that's a huge thing, right? Because it is confrontational. It is, and not in a mean way. It's just, I've got to be, if I'm going to be honest, it is confrontational, and we've got to get to the bottom of things. So that's a big deal. Yeah. So we've talked about two major things, kind of laid down some basics, and then just talked about fear. Next week, we get a chance to have you back on, and we're just going to talk about not necessarily solutions, but things that would make it better. How can we progress? How can we move on from this stage, whether it's next week, next month, next decade? But, I will say that I've already seen changes in culture. Like my kids don't have the same race conversations that my siblings and I would have, right? The experiences that we have are just different. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was, I won't use the language that this person used, but I worked at a school, and I remember Mr. Johnson, he said something to the effect like, people don't care what color you are. They care if you're being a jerk. He used a different word. I'm really making it nice. They care about like how you treat them and how you behave around them and how you are, impacting them, and that was basically it. And so, but that was not my generation, it wasn't. And so I know there are things that, although I still need to teach my our black young men, I still need to teach them some stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Because we are still living in a very non-DEI welcoming world. But I also have to be mindful that they do not have the same experiences that I have, and not to impose all of them, all of my experiences on them, So it's a way. But anyway, I look forward to next week.
Me too.
All right. Well, good stuff. So For all of you guys who tuned in, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, if you would like to contact Steve, you can find him on LinkedIn at Steve. I'm going to say it right. Oh my gosh. Ciesielski.
You got it.
Woo! All right. That's why I'm just going to keep saying Steve. We can find Steve on LinkedIn if you have any questions, or even if you feel like you, in your organization, you're feeling like, we might need some of this knowledge, some of this experience to come forth, reach out to Steve and he can give you some resources as to how to go about really making your workplace better. Or maybe you just have a personal question,
Right.
that you might like to ask. He'll be happy. I'm saying this assuming, and you're nodding.
Absolutely.
So I'm
Happy to have a conversation too.
that sounds great. In the meantime, if you guys have any feedback, questions, or anything like that, you could drop it in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Steve, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.